Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Jessica Waite, president of Very Good Food. Our podcast, Growing a Food Movement, is a forum for discussion about building a more resilient local food system. The COVID pandemic has emphasized the need for this resilience and has challenged many of us with the opportunity to create new systems and strategies. We have also seen an outpouring of support for our local businesses and our local heroes. This podcast Zoom series, The Bright Side, will highlight stories of growth and innovation as we discuss how we use these lessons to create momentum towards a healthier future. And today I am honored and thrilled to have Josh Phelps, who's the Director of Relief Operations at World Central Kitchen. Josh, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The benefit of this Zoom series is being able to reach people in all different places. And I understand you're in Oakland right now, so at least we're on the same time zone.
Yeah.
It's not too crazy. So can you tell us a little bit more about your organization?
Yeah, sure. I mean, World Central Kitchen was founded back around, I think, 2010, around the time of the big earthquake in Haiti. Our founder, Chef José Andrés, wanted to help, and he went down to Haiti, helped feed people, started a culinary school, which is still active. And that has been active, the Haiti work in perpetuity since then. But then after, hurricanes, Harvey and Maria back in 2017 and Houston and Puerto Rico, respectively, so a lot of the work sort of pivoted to acute disaster relief, using local food systems that are in place to help, feed the people, not have to rely on the government and MREs and things like that. Really, meals that can help save somebody, when someone's starving, but in the end are not a long-term solution for nutrition and keep helping sustain people who are food insecure. So since then, we've continued to react to disasters, both natural and humanitarian. We mentioned our mutual friends, Yolanda and the women of This Is About Humanity, who we've linked with in Tijuana, where we're feeding asylum seekers across 11 or 12 shelters, including some very vulnerable populations like LGBTQ. And so that's continued. That work has continued since the winter of 2018 also. And with COVID, another disaster, albeit a totally different kind, but we've been called upon to formulate some solutions domestically and internationally. We're active in many states across the U.S., also large operations in Spain, where Chef Jose is from, and some of our board members also who have been helping run that project. So it's been interesting. We also have been responding to COVID since the cruise ship was quarantined in Japan, in Yokohama, Japan. We had a relationship with the cruise company because of our work after Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas. And they asked us, hey, can you help us maybe source some vendors? We have to try and feed people on the cruise ship safely, but also, while they quarantine, how can we do this while cooking on the boat where people are sick? So part of our team flew over to Japan, utilized a kitchen in Tokyo to put many thousands of meals safely on the boat. As when we sort of all first got introduced to wearing PPE and gloves and hazmat suits, and just as COVID was sort of ramping up internationally outside of China, of course. So we did the same thing for the boat in Oakland too, right after that. And then I remember it was, early to mid-March is when, the U.S. started to really feel the heat from the virus, and places started to close, and we were asked to, help figure out solutions to keep people fed in many different places.
Wow, it's interesting because I usually ask, like, what did your landscape, your career look like prior to COVID? But it sounds like from the very beginning, you guys were primed and ready to step in and really start to create some assistance and positive change. So you personally, how did you end up in this role? Is this something that your background contributed to?
I mean, like a lot of us, I was a volunteer first. I had some connections in Puerto Rico. I used to go visit a lot. A childhood friend worked there. I was an air traffic controller. So from the East Coast, it's really easy to get to. It's a beautiful place. The whole island is wonderful. So I volunteered there. and was introduced to World Central Kitchen there. And then not too long after, in the early summer of the following year, there was a volcano, Volcan Fuego, in Guatemala erupted, and I had been involved with a DC-based nonprofit that takes youth to Guatemala to study Spanish and then teach basketball camps, just like a kind of a dual study cultural exchange leadership program. So when World Central Kitchen activated there, it kind of made sense to go down there. My career at the time was managing clinical trials, mostly for early phase cancer drugs. So first trial in human. Worked a lot in California at the time. A lot of those companies are in Northern California. A lot of the renowned sort of cancer centers are in LA, California area. But with that, I could work remotely. So that was how I was able to sort of, volunteer during the day, get a lot of work done at night, what I could in the morning. At that point, everyone's got their email on their cell phone or whatever, or even, if people remember what a BlackBerry was.
I do.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then, I was working as sort of a consultant in that industry. And then I just didn't pick up another contract that summer in Guatemala. So, well, let me see. I mean, it rolled right. One thing rolled into another. There was, Hurricane Florence in North Carolina, Hurricane Michael in Florida, and I became a contractor. And then a few of us just kind of stuck around. We were a small company a couple of years ago, maybe 5 to 10 people, and now we have 40 to 45 full-time employees. So many of whom have joined us since the massive Hurricane Dorian effort, and now this effort for the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it sounds like there probably is no day-to-day normal for you in this, effort through this crisis relief. But what does your actual job look like? Like, what are your areas of responsibility as you move through these crises?
I mean, I think it changes depending on if there's a disaster happening
Mm-hmm.
currently, and then in that case, everyone sort of wears a hats and we'll divvy up the work as needed. I mean, we have a director of procurement who handles a lot of our purchasing. We need vehicles, things like that on the ground. A lot of what we do and still do is travel very light. So we like to get into a place where something has happened and utilize what they have on the ground. Okay, this person has a kitchen, it's still viable. We can rent from them and, get some money in their pocket, or we can pay this person to be a driver, that sort of thing. Sometimes we have to take in our own equipment or ship in, like a place like an Abaco in the Bahamas where everything was wiped out, right? We have to sort of build from the ground up. So we do have now some more hard goods and materials, but anyway, I mean, people, now that we have more people, we can sort of divvy up the work, different project managers and things like that. So for instance, here in Oakland, we had a colleague and they've been working nonstop, 4 months straight on this. I've sort of had visibility on everything, but we needed somebody, an employee, to come and work with the contractors, it's a very special project. We're working with a lot of amazing groups on the ground, Oakland United School District, Steph and Aisha Curry, their foundation. And so the good thing is we're all sort of trained in this crisis relief so that we can step in and sort of make a warm handoff pretty easy and manage, different projects as needed. So like I said, I guess it's a long way of just saying it just as a project requires, we all wear many different hats. Now, when we're not maybe activated, I think a lot of what my job will be is sort of helping with the career development of some of the junior staff that we brought on more recently, and direct reports, making sure they get experience in the field. Here in Oakland, what I'd like to do is bring somebody over from the East Coast who's recently joined, and so that they can sort of manage the project, and then I'll have oversight from afar, or if something else happens, I need to go somewhere. So we have team members, we have several directors who live on the West Coast, in Oxnard, Ventura area. We have a warehouse there now with a lot of equipment that we can deploy if we need to, a lot of like hot boxes to keep food hot, Cambros and things like that. So yeah, we sort of are split up now, West Coast, East Coast, with the majority of folks, I think, based on the East Coast for now. But the beauty of what we do is because of the work is getting more well known. We have a very outspoken and dynamic leader and founder in José Andrés, and also in our CEO Nate Mook. We when it's not a pandemic, we work with a lot of volunteers. When it's not dangerous to do that. So we've been really blessed in that realm to be able to put out a call to people when we need them in certain places. And so what we've done in the pandemic is we've still utilized some of our former volunteers, but we've hired them contractors just for consistency. We hired the people we know we can trust to just follow the most strictest safety standards. So yeah, it all depends on the disaster. But I do, like you mentioned earlier, I think we really were in a place to adapt for COVID response, because we had been doing it for about a month and a half before it really ramped up. And to that end, I mean, most of what our response is instead of spinning up large kitchens and having people, packed together, making tons of food for thousands of people, which would be served in like a tray and congregate, the labor is much more intense for this, because everything has to be individually wrapped, individually packaged, what have you. So we raised philanthropic dollars and put those back into the community by purchasing meals from restaurants. So we've enrolled restaurants into this program, paying them, typically $10 a meal, and then they have some consistent revenue. They can bring employees back, and that was just, and then also in turn they're resuming their ordering. So that's, if they dependent wherever they order from, we don't get involved in the supply chain. Some maybe still order from large wholesale companies. Some are ordering from local farms, which is great. So the whole, to be able to put our philanthropic dollars and keep that cycle going and that economic engine of restaurants going is obviously really important to us. Our founder's a restaurant owner. This has hit that business side hard too, just like everybody else. And we also are working with some groups providing like produce boxes and things like that too. So, which is, using local farms. We're working with some brokers here up in Oakland who are, getting us produce from, south of here, Salinas, I'm not from California, but I know there's tons of, towns with amazing farms in them. So we're able to provide those on top of the restaurant quality meals to the folks that we're serving, both up here, and we have a pretty large operation in Los Angeles also.
That's awesome. Well, and I have to say thank you for your support of the restaurants, because we had a small but similar program here where the city was funding purchase of meals from us to distribute to local vulnerable populations. And it saved our butts for a couple of months there, really, to have that income. And so that's hugely helpful. And that was kind of my next question, is how do you integrate into these local food systems? And you kind of just jumped in and answered it. So I love that. Thank you very much.
Stop me. I'll ramble on about this.
No, you're making it easy, because that was really the question. So kind of thinking about who these recipients are of this support, how do you really dig in and find those populations that you mentioned the food system, but who usually receives the support from World Central Kitchen?
Yeah, so a lot of times it's been local community-based organizations that perhaps a lot of volunteer bases are of risk people, people of a higher age who were told not to go outside. So they've lost their volunteer base. Maybe some of them have lost their funding to feed the seniors or whatever their mission was before. So we plug in with local organizations to say, hey, we can support with meals, and we'll purchase these meals from local restaurants who enroll in our program and then provide them to you. And what we would try, we either devise delivery systems using some of the rideshare apps. What we prefer is having the restaurant deliver themselves, because then we can fold in a cost for that too, and that money goes directly back into their pocket. And then they'll take to a central location, perhaps like a senior home, assisted living facility, maybe a public housing facility, and then people there will distribute, and we make sure that everyone knows they need to wear masks and gloves, both to protect themselves, but to protect other people who are maybe at-risk population from them. So yeah, just working in a local community, or like I said, working with Eat, Learn, Play, which is Steph and Aisha Curry's foundation up here in Oakland, who are plugged into the community. We're covering all areas of Oakland now. We're working with people, pillars of the Chinese community, of the Korean community, in West Oakland, East Oakland. We're working with, I think, around 120 restaurants right now, doing about 7,000 meals a week. And that's, just not counting the produce boxes and everything. And also a lot of the, local schools have stepped up in a big way to feed people and their families, even though their funding is not to feed families, it's just to feed the kids. So we've put meals on top of the meals that the kids get, so that way the family or friend or whomever might be with the child can get an extra meal. And we did that in LA too, to a much larger extent. We worked with a partner kitchen that works in schools. It's one of the vendors for schools, but does like more nutritious meals. So for some of our large scale programming, we invoked them, but like up here in Oakland, we've completely switched any prepackaged meals out for all produce boxes. So we've been we've been lucky in that respect, and that really just digging into the community is how we find out where the need is. Sometimes you can just make a call to talk to the city. Okay, connect me to the local aging alliance or something like that. And then word gets out. Once you get a few things going, people will find us.
Yeah, well, exactly. They know where the need is, and they'll search it out, and having that opportunity is incredible. And one thing we focus a lot on Barry, Barry Good Food, our local organization, is just the idea of food justice and access to the healthy food we need. And in my last cast, I was just talking to a physician who was just talking about the importance of those nutritious, healthy vegetables. You mentioned MREs and the opportunity to just feed people, but as what you're doing is providing them with meals that are actually going to nourish and sustain and create immunities in their body. So that's a whole different component that's so exciting.
Yeah, and with that, it's we like to say that we have serving a meal with dignity that looks is nutritious, but also a lot of these folks haven't had a meal made for them maybe that looks that way or something for a long time. So just mentally, and then if we're in North Carolina, we're not above serving people barbecue and mac and cheese and stuff, comfort food, especially somebody who's just lost material possessions, worse, we like to serve. We'll make sure we have some greens in there too, but we like to serve. We work with local volunteer chefs. A lot of times maybe their restaurant's closed, so they'll come volunteer with us, or we'll hire them on, for amount of time. This is in our disaster relief. So it's easy right now with COVID in terms of making sure we're working with local chefs, because that's all we do. We're putting that money right back in. So. And a lot of the people we work with, maybe once a month or a few times a month, work with communities in need, and they're like, oh, well, I work with this community, and so we're like, okay, well, we'll set you. We'll pay you to do that.
That's awesome. No, that's incredible. And I'm sure everyone along the chain appreciates it. And just like you said, keep that moving, keep the vendors getting paid, because that was what, I think one of the most catastrophic things about this is it just halted everything. So that entire supply chain process, the farmers seem to be doing better, honestly, than ever from the ones I've talked to, because all of a sudden there was this attention to, our local food system. And that was so exciting to see. And that's actually what the impetus for this podcast was just talking to local farmers who are saying, I could have grown 3 times as much produce and still had a market for it right now. But people, because people are coming out and they want that local food. And so, I guess that kind of transitions me into my next question that I love to ask is kind of, from your observation over the course of this entire journey, over the last couple of months, have you seen things that are inspiring to you? I talk about this bright side, or the lessons that we want to learn and bring forward with us as we move on. And I know being somebody who's very familiar with crisis, you probably see this a lot, but do you have things about the COVID pandemic specifically where you're like, wow, these are that kind of that bright side or that inspiring piece?
Yeah. I mean, every day we talk to restaurants that, they say, look, without you enlisting us to feed the needy, maybe we wouldn't be able to reopen and kickstart our takeaway business. Some for lack of a better term, some restaurants where places are reopening have sort of graduated and say, look, we are ready to get back to our regular business. You guys saved us, and by helping us help other people. And that's great. We want to hear those stories. And we've you know, for the folks that we've been able to be a lifeline to, it's completely inspiring to see how, because they were going through a lot, people not knowing how they're going to pay their rent, bring back employees, keep the lights on. And, you know, that if they move off the program, it allows us to bring another restaurant that maybe wanted to be on, but have the need. So, so we get stories like that all the time, every day. Particularly in California, we are working with the United Farm Workers Union to feed farm workers who are still out there busting their behinds every day to make sure that these systems are going, you know. And like you said, and farmers are, there's a new attention, and they are getting their product out. I mean, so no one has ever set up a line to feed thousands of farm workers outside of the farm or at the end of the day, you know. So we've got, I forget how many of those we have going, you know, I think 4 or 5 doing many thousands of meals a week, which, you know, we've been able to raise funds for to do that. Yeah, and then just the recipients of the meals, you know, there's a lot of people who, we're working with a group in Philly, Sunday Love Project, that is providing meals for people who maybe never had to ask for help before and didn't know how or felt about it, you know what I mean? And you know, we want those people to, you know, no one should ever be embarrassed to ask for help, you know, and when they do need help, we're so happy to work with a local grassroots organization that knows where those people are and have set up, you know, been able to get the word out for folks who maybe aren't going to go down to where the homeless are being fed at the park. They don't even know about it, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, every day there's something inspiring, because if it wasn't, you know, it's a lot of work. You're seeing, you see the side of it where, oh my gosh, this is such a disaster. It's been mishandled by a lot of people in many ways, but luckily we're able to see the other side. So I feel lucky to do that. Lucky to be busy working on something like that. You know, and like, you're getting to hear so many stories like that probably all the time now with this podcast series. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's incredibly inspiring. And it's just the strength of the human spirit. Like you said, there's a lot of stuff kind of just weighing down right now and a lot of negativity, but there is so much positivity to be taken from this. And I hear so many stories about community and how people have come together within their communities in areas where they don't have any support from the government or any, you know, anyone else, and how they support each other and feed each other.
Well, one thing too, I was going to say with the farmers and people have finally started to use it more, is that the USDA is for people who sign up for a program to sort of distribute food from farmers, they can get reimbursed. So we've been using, you know, some of that program directly, but also playing a connector. You know, we have a group called the Hatchery that we work with in Chicago, who has a loading dock and has storage space. So somebody reached out to us via our, you know, generic World Central email, like the hello, and they were very surprised, but we monitor all that very closely. We have a team sort of triaging all those. So we called the guy the next day. He was a vendor. He's like, hey, I got these boxes. I can purchase them and get reimbursed by the USDA, but I have to donate them to a 501c3. So the Hatchery is one. Obviously, we are one. And we were like, okay, well, you can buy these boxes, send them to this place, and then we'll distribute some of the boxes to our community partners in Chicago, and then the Hatchery will do it the same. So we're able to sort of play a connector on that level too, where maybe the Hatchery never would have been connected to this guy who has, you know, 1,200 boxes of fresh produce that they can distribute in their community. So
that's so cool. It's just so, I mean, it's so cool. And the idea that we're strengthening these connections, and then if something does come along and happen again, they'll be that much stronger and they'll know who to call. That's exciting. That's, I mean, not the idea of having another crisis is not exciting, but the idea that we're getting more resilient because of this, building those networks. And who knows, there might be synergies that come from those networks in the future moving forward when we're out of this place of triage.
Well, now we are so plugged into way more cities domestically than we were before, because typically we activate when there's a natural disaster. And we have some experience in the Midwest and with tornadoes and floods. But, you know, typically wouldn't be, you know, thinking about activating in Chicago, right? Or Portland, where we are in Seattle. Well, you should go down and check out the kitchen sometime in Tijuana with Yolanda. It's a great
I would
team.
love to. I feel like I've had the opportunity and missed it because of some other travel plans or something, and I
Yeah.
need to get down there. So just hearing about you and your work and your organization and the funding that this must take. If anyone listening is interested in learning more and or supporting this organization, what is the best way for them to access more information?
Yeah, I mean, they can go to our website. It's easy, wck.org. wck.org/donate is the direct
Uh-huh.
donation. I mean, they could email me, josh@wck.org is perfectly fine.
Mm,
Yeah, appreciate you spreading the word. Thank you.
absolutely. Is there any last thoughts or anything else you want to get out before we wrap up for the day? I appreciate your time so much.
No, I don't think so. It's great. It's always good to talk about the work. I really like the opportunity to also just the teams that we have domestically set up and in Spain. A lot of volunteers, a lot of contractors. They've been just operating at a super high level for 4 months. So I'm just super proud to be associated with them. Those people on the ground doing the work. And no, today it's a beautiful day in Oakland. I'm going to go meet with some of our local organizations and say hi. And we're launching a big initiative in Chinatown today too. So yeah, it's good.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today, with me, with
Yes.
Very Good Food and anyone who does end up listening. So have a beautiful day and thank you so much for your work.
All right. You too. Appreciate it. Take care.
Okay. Bye bye.